Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Fundy Motorsports Magazine. I'm Dave Hanlon, and, well, this is our last show of the season. It's the last one for 91. We'll see you back here next year, and with me is producer Don Ferguson. How you doing, Don?
Good, Dave.
That's good.
Good to be back in the studio.
Yeah, it is. I took a little vacation last week, and you took over. Did a good job.
Yeah, it was a rough weekend without you.
Did a good job. You know, it's one of those things that happens. Next season, got a lot of great stuff coming up.
Well, it sure looks that way.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that a little later on. Now, just recently you were out at Pennfield Dragway. First races of the season out there.
Yep. What's happening down there is somebody went and obtained a lease, and they thought they'd try to get some drag racing started, and from what it looked like down there Saturday, it was a pretty good turnout, and it looks like we're going to be back in action next year.
Good, good. There was bikes. I know that for sure. Dragsters, street cars. Roughly about how many people did show up? Or as far as racers, anyway?
Competitors, there were about 150 competitors. And then on top of that, you probably had another 300-400 spectators.
And what did range from everything from like street cars right up to pro stocks and modified dragsters and...
Yeah. Well, what they were running were 3 classes of bracket racing. Maybe if we roll a little clip here, I can explain about how things are rolling.
That'd be the best way to see it. Let's just see a little bit of it. Okay, here we go.
Okay. Now, what they were doing down there was they had 3 classes. They invited people to run in 3 separate classes. First of all, the street class, which means your car has to be street-worthy. It has to be legal on the street, and there were approximately 75 competitors in that class. The second class was the pro class. Now they were running in, like, again, these are built strictly for drag racing.
Like those ones you see right there, yeah.
And what they would do is they were running elapsed times of 12 seconds and over. And for those vehicles that ran under 12 seconds, they were put into the Super Pro class.
And Super Pros would be, well, basically funny cars or the long...
Well, no. Actually, the surprising thing here is as you'll see, some of the cars going up the starting line don't look anything alike. So you could have a mixture. You could have the rail dragster, which is what you're thinking about, the long ones, the rail machines, and they could be up against a car such as one of these. It depends basically on what you put in your car.
I was quite impressed. A little clip you'll see up here pretty soon. Pinto was in too.
Well, you put something like a 454 in a Pinto, it's going to move.
That's true, because they are so lightweight, yeah. Now, as far as the spectators, we're just seeing, you said there was roughly about 400 spectators?
There were quite a few. I didn't actually count them there, but bleachers down both sides of the track were pretty well full, as well as there were a lot of people down the pits, as I'm doing right here, taking a wander through the pits because there was lots to see.
Now, we should explain to the people that this is just a taste of what hopefully we are going to see next year out of drag racing. We're going to, when we get out and start taping it next year, when it gets in full force, we're going to like have 2 or 3 cameras out there and, you know, make it look really good for the people so they when they see it.
Well, unfortunately, this Saturday, it was kind of a rush thing, and I was trying to get it in between 2 other obligations that I had, and I wasn't able to stay for the finals, but definitely next year we're going to give people a taste of the competition itself, whereas this year I wasn't able to actually show you the competition and what happened in the competition, but there were people from entrants from all over Maine, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island. You know, it was a really good turnout.
Now, have you ever wanted to race a dragster?
I'd try anything, at least once.
This is true.
Maybe not more than once.
This is the man who drove a mini stock around the track, and did a fair job, from what I understand.
Well, I didn't. I kept it between the walls.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
You kept it on the track.
I kept it on the track.
That's the main thing.
That reminds me, I ran into some of our stock car buddies down there. One in particular, Colin Cassidy, Corey's younger brother, and you know, Corey this year, I believe he won the Rookie of the Year award. He did an excellent job, and I guess Corey wants to try it next year when he turns 16.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, one thing a lot of people don't know is why cars burn out like that. I know, but why don't you explain it to them?
Okay. The basic idea of these cars are running very low air temperatures. They have quite a thin wall tire on them, and what they do is by heating the tire up, spinning them real fast, and getting the heat build up, the tires actually grow. And the larger tire that you have, the ratio that you're actually moving down the track corresponds to that. It changes if you've got a larger tire. Plus, it makes the tire have more grip.
Yeah, it makes it stickier.
It makes it stickier.
A lot stickier. That's why when you see, like in the pro racing, like NASCAR racing and all that, when they go in and they change tires and then they get back on the track in a yellow light, you'll see them kind of going back and forth, and some people go, is there something wrong with the steering? It's not. What they're doing is they're actually warming up their tires.
Keeping the tires warm. You'll find a lot of racing classes, they'll preheat the tires. You'll see actual electric blankets on tires, sitting on the car.
Now, with some bikes like the one you see on the other side, and cars, you'll notice they have a regular street tire on the front, and then on the back they have what's known as slicks.
Well, again, the slick gives you more contact patch on the road. In dry pavement.
Yeah.
Okay, wet pavement, that's not the story anymore.
Not the good idea to go. So don't go out and buy a pair of slicks and put them on your car, in other words, what we're trying to say. But with the slicks, there's absolutely no tread on them.
Mm-hmm.
And they are like very, very thin as far as the rubber goes between the inside and the outside of the tire.
Now here they're showing the Christmas tree, as it's usually known. It's the starting light system. It's surprisingly difficult to run down that quarter mile, because you're not only competing against the guy in the next lane, you're competing against that light. And I want to explain a little bit about here. What they're doing is bracket racing, okay? They go down in the morning and they'll run time trials, and they'll take like your fastest time trial and they'll mark that time on your car. Mm-hmm. Then they'll put you up against another guy. Now his time trials, he might have completely different time. It could be 3 seconds different than yours. Mm-hmm. Well, what they do is they adjust the computers, and it changes the speed those lights go to the green, okay? If your ET is, say, 1198, and the next guy's is 1298, that's 12.98 seconds, there'll be a 1 second difference in the time your light goes green. Now, when you're pulling away from the line, you have to be careful. There's a rule, I don't know where this came from, that says the human foot cannot respond quicker than 4/10 of a second. So when that light goes green, you're not allowed to leave in that first 4/10 of a second, or you have what you call a red light. At the other end, you've got your trap speed. Mm-hmm. Okay, that gives you your top end speed, and your time, your elapsed time from the time you cross the start line to the finish line. Now, if that elapsed time happens to be less than what your time trial time was, then that's called a breakout, and you lose. So it's very important to be doing the best you can during the time trials. You still have to beat the other guy down the other end, but you could beat him and still lose if you went faster than your time trials.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes it very difficult.
Now, when they're at the tree, what they're doing, like a lot of people will see them getting up and stopping and then moving ahead a bit more. And what they're actually doing is what's called staging, because there's 2 little laser lights there. And the first one is what's known as pre-staged.
Right.
And then the second one is staged, and that's to let the computer know that, okay, hey, they're all set. As soon as the guy presses the button, they're ready to race.
Yeah.
And down at the end of the track, now they don't use what a radar gun.
No.
For speed. You were saying something about the elapsed time?
Yes, the elapsed time. You saw a quick shot there of the computers that they use. The computer's connected to all the timing lights. There's a light, as you say, shining across the track, and there's detectors. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that tells you when the tire rolls by that spot. In other words, it blocks the light. The computer records when that happened. Okay, so when you leave, the computer records when you're leaving. It records your speed, your elapsed time, first of all, of your reaction time, how quick you were able to get out after that light went green. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you went after the light went green.
Yeah.
Your first 60 feet, it's also recorded, so you get a printout back, tells you how fast you're moving in that first 60 feet, how quick you get out. At the other end, you have your traps, and that will record your speed from the start to the end of the trap, so you know what your top end speed is. It'll also record the finish line speed, so you'll know the elapsed time from the start to the finish.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I know a lot of people do wonder about, when they're doing their warm-up, they're spinning the tires, getting the tires hot, they're burning out. When they're at the track, it's not a good idea to burn out off the starting line.
No.
Why is that?
Well,
just to let them know, you know.
Basically, wheel spin is a waste because you're using up all your energy spinning the tires, but you're not moving the car forward. The car moves forward when it grips the road, and that's basically the idea. If the tire's gripping the road, you're moving forward. If it's just spinning, it's a problem I used to have with my Mustang. And it would just sit there and spin, and you couldn't move.
And there are adjustments you can do to the cars. Most modified cars, anyway, there's adjustments where you can just a couple slight adjustments to adjust the differential or the...
Yeah, well, there's different things. First of all, you don't want a limited slip, or you do want a limited slip, sorry, so that the tires won't spin and leave you sitting there, and then the other one doesn't do anything. The larger tire naturally gives you a larger contact patch. There's other things you can do with your suspension, locking down, especially when you get into high-powered cars, to get rid of wheel hop. You have to be careful of that because what's happening there is your rear spring is reacting to the torque of the tire, and it starts bouncing up and down. When that happens, again, you're losing traction.
It's just the same as this tire spinning.
So you'll see a lot of the dragsters have the rear ends, the rear suspension clamped down pretty hard. So when that car bites, it goes.
Yeah. Well, you don't see a lot of it like most cars, like most street cars. You'll see it in the front end will come up and they'll move like that. These things are pretty well solid.
They want to keep them down. In fact, you'll see some of them that have the wheelie bars just to do that. Same with the motorcycles.
Yeah, that's another thing I was going to get at is the wheelie bars. I seen, it was I think 2 years ago, or it was either last year or 2 years ago, out at Pennfield Raceway. There was one of the guys on one of the street bikes. And it was a Harley Davidson, and you know he was all set and ready to go, and he had the elapsed time where he went first.
Yeah.
So all he did was, as soon as the light went green, he popped the clutch, and the bike just went right up out from underneath him and took off down the track and left him standing there.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to get the finish line unless you're on the bike.
Yeah, but if you do cross, you still win, even though you're not on the bike. But
I'll have to get the ruling on that one.
Well, you never know. But yeah, that's why most of them put the wheel bars on. In the bigger cars, there's a even greater chance of the car to flipping over.
It's a horsepower to weight ratio is really what you're looking at there, and the amount of torque that you can put on those rear wheels. And the torque is trying to lift the front end of the car up.
And one thing I've always wanted to know, you see them on the really long-nosed dragsters. They're called the long ones.
Rails.
Rail cars, yeah. You see, there were little teeny small front wheels that look like little baby carriage wheels, and then you get the big wide ones in the back.
Yeah.
Why the small ones in the front?
Basically, the smaller they are, the less wind drag you're going to have. And those cars have so little weight on the front end, because of the torque, is lifting the front end all the time. When they're going down the track, those wheels are just barely touching. So there isn't much use for the large one now. There's some drivers like the larger wheels, and some of them like the smaller ones. It's still up in the air as to which works best for any particular person.
Smaller, thinner. I'd assume the smaller and the thinner they are, the better that you'd be getting.
Yeah, the basic idea, whether they're
basically
thin
touch steering anyway,
or whether they're small, the idea is to cut down wind resistance. And when you start pushing over 200 miles an hour, it makes a difference.
I could imagine very much so. Well, what do you say we take a break right now, and then we'll come back and talk about what's coming up next season?
Okay, then, great.
Okay. Welcome back to Fundy Motorsports Magazine. I'm Dave Hanlon with Don Ferguson, the producer of the show. And Don, coming up next season, we've got a great show. Well, I should say a great bunch of shows, not just one.
Well, this year was basically an experiment on this show. I wanted to see, if there was an interest in it, and the response I've got has been great.
Definitely. A lot of people out there. I mean, everybody I talk to now, I mean, I work at 98 Light FM too, and I mean, I have people calling me up. Yeah, I seen you on TV last night. It's like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What'd you think? You know, not of me, of the show.
Yeah.
And they just love it.
Yeah, it's been great. I hope for a lot of expansion next year. First thing, want to do is run it for about 6 months. And
yeah, we started mid-season this year.
yeah,
It's about the middle of the season when we started, so people, you know, around the middle of the season, a lot of people don't know, okay, well, where can we see it, you know, for one. And then once they started, the word started getting around, they were starting to watch and calling in and stuff like that. Which also reminds me, that's one thing when we were off camera we weren't mentioning. If you have any comments or questions, we've got a phone number and an address we'll put up at the end of the show for you to call either him or me. And you can get in touch with us if you have any comments, like, you know, what we should do next year. Speaking of which, coming up next year.
Coming up next year, well, there'll be a lot of what we had this year. As you saw, we just saw that drag racing. That should be a welcoming addition next year.
Yeah.
There'll be motocross, 4x4. Now, that's something we haven't had yet this year. That will be included next year. In fact, we will be doing a special coming up shortly on mud running. That's timed events through the mud. And
fun stuff.
like I said, a weekly show, 6 months, you know, 26 issues is a lot of work, but I think there's material out there.
I think we can pull it off.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people out there who watch the show. There's a growing interest in the show. And, you know, one thing I did mention when we were off screen, I didn't even realize there were that many motorsports events in St. John until we started doing the show. Like, I figured when Don mentioned doing the show last year, I just kind of figured, okay, well, we'll be doing stock car racing, drag racing, and then the drag racing was canceled, so I just figured, okay, we'll be doing stock car racing. That's about it. You know, maybe a couple motocross here and there, but there is a lot of things happening in the city that people don't realize.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot. Well, for instance, the Sporting Car Club, I never heard of them until...
Well, I knew about them from years back. I used to do a little rallying myself, and when I contacted them, I found out, you know, because rallying had really died down, and it's starting to pick its way back up, as well as the slaloms that they have, which, by the way, they go on all winter.
I want to get in one of those too. I do. I definitely want to get in one of those.
Yeah, they'll be running all winter, the last Sunday of every month, and the same location, as far as I know, at the Superstore Mall. And the winter time, well, it makes different events, but it's even for everybody.
And we're not going to stop tape just because the show's over for the season, too. We're not stopping tape. We're rolling all through winter, too. So if you do have anything happening out there, like if you're maybe building a race car and want to put it in next year and you want to get what it's like to build one on the air or whatever, contact us. Or
actually, Dave, we've already had contact.
Yeah, we've had contacts on that, but, you know, just in case we get, you know, someone else is interested, you know, in getting into racing and they want to build a car from the ground up or just take a street car and put it in or whatever.
Well, that's true. I will be gathering material over the winter months because there is a lot of construction going on during the winter months that, you know, if you wait till spring, then you miss it all.
Yeah, exactly.
As well as I will be doing a couple of special events. We had one so far on the NASCAR, which is pretty well received. The next one I'm going to be doing is the last 2 weeks of stock car racing in Hammer River were pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, I mean there was more crashes out there in the last 2 weeks, I think, than the whole season.
Everybody was pushing pretty hard.
Yeah, well, there was big money and big points in there.
And it was a very tight battle, especially in the bomber class, and I think people are going to enjoy watching that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's coming up
in a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks time. Yeah, an hour-long feature.
90 minutes.
90 minutes.
90 minutes.
Oh, well, jeez. I'm not told anything. I'm just told what to do when I sit here.
Yeah, and after that, hopefully a couple weeks after that, I'll be able to have the New Brunswick 4x4 Club and have their competition on here too.
Yeah, yeah. And then, like you said, coming up next year, we've got a lot of great stuff. I keep saying that, but we do, obviously, because, I mean, with the response we had this year, we're going to have a lot next year. Like you said, stock car racing, drag racing, motocross, more from the Mustang clubs, the rallies.
Yeah, that's something that I kind of missed out on this year. They are having a poker run, they call it, and when the leaves change and those guys get out cruising through the back roads and stuff, it's pretty much fun. You know? It's pretty enjoyable. I'd like to get some of that on tape, but maybe next year I'll get one of their runs.
Maybe. You never know. Now, before we go, there are actually, as you can see, there's quite a few people we have to thank. Quite a few. And, well, I'll just throw it over to you because there's a few people, like, as far as contacts that we'd like to thank.
Well, I've had a lot of help from these people. Believe it, you have to believe that. They've helped me tremendously, getting me into the venue, letting me know what's going on, just bending over backwards.
Yeah, you do all the contacts, and I do all the all the sit down in front of the camera stuff.
The hard stuff.
The hard stuff, yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to thank some of these people that made this show possible here from Pennfield Dragway. There's a couple of new leaseholders, Bill Groom and Danny McGee. If anybody's looking to get involved in drag racing for next year, you can give him a call. His number is 466-6058.
If you heard that, Lenny, do it.
Yeah.
Friend of mine drags bikes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. Out at Hammond River, had a lot of help from Bobby Garnett, Leroy Hatfield, and Barb, who...
We don't know. We'll say Barb from the land of last names.
Yeah.
Land of no last names, yes.
I know her maiden name. The Southern New Brunswick Mustang Club, Sam Cameron and Doug McLean. From the Mini Stock Association, Lee McCummer and Elaine Collins. That was a lot of fun doing that interview.
Yeah, it was. It was.
New Brunswick 4x4 Club, Paul Ferris. You'll be able to meet him in a couple of weeks. New Brunswick Sporting Car Club, Stacy Chapman, Gary McKnight.
Stacy's helped out a lot, too, sending in results from a lot of stuff that we couldn't get to.
Yeah, and letting me get a drive in the car.
And, yes, driving the car, yeah.
That's one of the perks of the job. From MassCar, Al Robinson and Mike McCarville. From the Valley Cruisers Club, Gary Randalls. The St. John Motorcycle Competition Club, I believe I got that right. Peter Haslett, Austin Slay. Boris the Monster Truck, Larry Albert Jr. and Jackie, his wife.
And family for letting us mess up their house.
Yeah. Yeah, we had to kind of push the kids
Yeah,
out
we
of the way.
pushed some stuff away, yeah.
And from Ridgeway Motorsports, our Thundercart, I'm going to say, supplier, let us drive them around.
Yeah.
John Ridgeway.
Yeah.
I expect to see a little bit more of John next year, especially when the MassCar Tour comes around.
Yeah, he'll be coming back. He'll also be coming back next year again with the Thundercarts too. And in case you missed it last week. Thundercarts are go-karts, but he's got I believe 8 of them, and they cook.
Yeah.
We were cruising going around that little track.
It doesn't look like it on camera, but when you're going through those corners, you can feel the tires slipping underneath.
Yeah. And like he said, I mean, they're set up just like regular stock cars. They got the different size wheels and everything. So.
And that's something way back. That was the first thing I ever tried racing was go-karts. My family was involved in go-kart racing, and I've missed it for a lot of years. I hope it comes back and people start buying their own, and
I got a rush.
Maybe get a little competition going on.
I got a rush.
Yeah.
I got in that. Well, I showed up about 4 o'clock, and me and John Vino, and I think him and I spent about $30 there racing for about 2 hours, just going around and around. It was a blast. Yeah. You can't beat it too for the price. But
speaking of go-karts, you had some people helping you out there.
Yeah, I had a few people I contacted to help come out and help out with that show when we did it. Darren, Vince, and Frank. We'll call them the go-kart boys. They were the guys who were going around the back of the track, and the guys who raced as well in the race that you seen last week, as well a few of the people who helped out on the show all through the season. Did a fantastic job. Everybody, Monica Cormier, our regular studio assistant here, is better known as Mo. That's her nickname. Or Moo, either one. She hates that, but I had to get it in there. I had to call her Moo. Glenn Sullivan, Sully, he has helped out a lot. He's done audio, he's done camera work for us, a lot of lugging around too. Glenn McKinney, our playback operator, he's done a lot.
He's always there to give a hand.
He's always there to give a hand, always, as well to lend out clothes too.
Oh, yeah.
One time I had to borrow his jacket that was like 5 times too big, but
we'll explain why that is in a minute.
He's a big boy. Also John Vino, he's done camera for us and lugged a little bit of equipment around, and I'd like to thank him as well. I'd like to thank the program director here at Fundy Cable, Steve Daly, and the assistant program director, Lisa Gribbins. They've helped out a lot. Steve and Lisa have both given us a lot of support.
Well, they let us put this on the air.
Yeah, and I mean, we got a letter of thanks from Steve, good luck in the future and all that, and I know he's getting a tremendous response from it as well.
Which brings up something that about next year I plan on bigger and better things, and one of the things I'm hoping for is to have wider coverage, see Stephen, Fredericton, other places in the Fundy Cable group.
Yeah, and hopefully wider coverages as far as going out and getting the stuff too.
With any luck.
Possibly, we're not saying this for sure, but possibly we might be getting maybe Riverglade and Petty Raceway. It's iffy now. It's